big news. We've got a dual meet potentially going down next week, February 8th. It's at the PIAA Team State Tournament, and it's number 1, Faith Christian Academy, taking on number 2, Bishop McCort. Obviously, these two teams have to get through the state dual meet tournament for this duel to happen, but that's going to be the expectation. And when they collide, it's going to be for all the marbles, number 1 spot in the country. 16 nationally ranked wrestlers in this dual meet. 10 of those guys are in the top 10 in the country. It's going to be fireworks, and I cannot wait to see what happens. So before we get into the dual meet itself, you got to understand how these teams got to where they are right now. Ironman, the first major tournament of the high school season. Faith Christian dominated that thing. They won by a whole bunch of points. They took over the number 1 spot in the country. They took out Bishop McCort, Wyoming Seminary, Blair Academy, a lot of the nation's best teams. So it was Faith Christian number 1, obviously. But then the following week, they lost that number 1 ranking when they fell to Wyoming Seminary in a dual meet. So now Faith Christian is sitting at number 2. But they moved back up to the number 1 spot after Wyoming Seminary had a little bit of some bumps in the road. They finished like 5th or 6th at PowerAid, so that knocked them down. And then Bishop McCort took out Wyoming Seminary in a dual meet, which moved them up to number 2 in the country. So all the dust has settled. We've got number 1 Faith Christian, number 2 Bishop McCort, and they could collide for the number 1 spot at the PIAA Team State Tournament. You're not going to want to miss it. The last time Bishop McCort and Faith Christian met in a dual meet, it was at the Pennsylvania Team States a year ago. In that dual meet, it was all Faith Christian. They took Bishop McCort out 46-18. This dual meet is star-studded. You've got some of the biggest stars in high school wrestling competing for both these teams. On the Bishop McCort side of things, you've got Bo Bassett, Jax Forrest, Sam Herring, Melvin Miller, list goes on and on. But then on the Faith Christian side of things, you've got Fred and Joe Bachman, Gage Botero, Adam Waters, and that's not all. They've got so many good wrestlers. This thing is going to be incredible. You're going to be seeing some of the highest level wrestlers in all of the country in one dual meet. So how's this dual meet going to go? Well, there are a few really important questions that are going to probably determine who ends up winning this duel once and for all. For Faith Christian, what are they going to do with 121 pounds and 127 pounds? They've got Gage Botero and Joe Bachman there. At the beginning of the year, Joe Bachman was at 121, Botero up at 127, but recently they switched places at Escape the Rock. So what are they going to do? What's Coach Clymer going to do with those two guys? Is he going to keep them where they've been most recently, or do we see Bachman go back to 121? Something to keep an eye on. There are lineup questions for Bishop McCort too. Obviously, lineup construction is one of the most important elements of a high school dual meet. This is not like an NCAA dual meet where your 125-pounder is always your 125-pounder. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. And remember, before the Bishop McCort Wyoming Seminary duel, Coach Bill Bassett explained that, hey, they're going to keep their lineup secret. They're going to try to be strategic and try to, maybe have the element of surprise to their advantage. But one thing we know is when Bishop McCort released their probable lineup for that dual meet against Wyoming Sem, they listed Jax Forrest down a weight at 126. They listed Sam Herring down a weight. Now, we haven't seen those guys wrestle that lower weight, but it could be something to keep an eye on. What would it look like in a dual meet if all of a sudden Jax Forrest is down at 127 and potentially wrestling a guy like Gage Botero or Joe Bachman? I mean, that makes this dual meet a lot more interesting. So how are these coaches going to use their lineups? They've got a lot of options. That's something to keep an eye on because we really don't know, right? Where does Bo Bassett wrestle? He could be anywhere from 145 to 152. What are they going to do with a guy like Jackson Butler, who is now in the national rankings, even though he's behind Bassett at the weight? That lineup construction is going to be one of the key elements and one of the most important things that could determine who's ultimately the winner of this duel meet. The other X factor in this duel is the X factor in every duel. It's going to be bonus points. We have some of the most prolific bonus point scoring wrestlers in the country competing in this duel meet. Jax Forrest is a tech fall and pin machine. Expect bonus points, although what happens if he's wrestling down against a ranked wrestler like Bachman or Botero? That could change things. Bo Bassett, this guy techs and pins just about everybody. I think he teched his way through Ironman and then pinned his way through PowerAid. So how is that going to look? And then Adam Waters. This is a guy who's never afraid to put somebody feet to back. Don't forget his Pennsylvania State Championship as a freshman. He just went out, ripped a lefty headlock, got the pin. I mean, this guy, you got to expect bonus points coming from him, but are we going to see bonus points up and down the lineup, right? Are we going to see Fred Bachman push for bonus against a tough guy like Eli Herring? Are we going to see other guys, Melvin Miller, is he going to push for bonus? What's going to happen there? Those bonus points are going to be crucial. So there's a lot we don't know going into this dual meet, but what we do know, the action is going to be incredible. The #1 spot in the country on the line. You're not going to want to miss the PIAA Team State Finals. It's Saturday, February 8th. Don't miss it.